prototype that I had created.
There we go. Sorry.
Good call. No, good call. Let me just start over again real quick.
Yeah.
I conducted 7 interviews on usertesting.com with the prototype that I'd created and have gotten some good feedback so far. Something I was surprised about, and I'm still going through the notes, but I'll put them all in the issue. So most folks felt that when I asked them to find a couple of different ways to view the layout for the issue that they had opened, they would go back to the to-do list. So let me just share really quick my screen and I'll kind of show the prototype itself. And they are paving the street in front of my house. So I apologize if you hear some rumbling out there.
Oh,
so what they were asked to do. Oh, hang on.
No, I can hear you. I just can't hear any of the sound.
Oh, good.
Sorry.
Okay. Sometimes my AirPods do just kind of randomly drop. So I wanted to be sure you could hear me. So what I had asked them to do was I gave just a little overview of kind of what this view is for folks that weren't familiar with GitLab or similar products, and then asked them to choose the issue from Jeremy, which everyone did with no problem. Had them kind of describe what they see and asked them to find 2 other ways to view this content or to view this issue, I called it in the instructions. So most people read through it. A couple of folks, and I did a little bit of internal review as well, and almost everyone has said they felt that this view and the side panel view were a little like cluttered. There was a little bit too much information there. So that's good feedback. That's helpful for me to know maybe that we need to reduce some of what we have there or explore some other ways to maybe do progressive disclosure and reduce some of the visual noise. One person said,
oh, sorry, I'm just jumping in, but I love the comment bar at the bottom. That's the first time I've seen that in this view. But I almost wonder if the comments could be hidden and you're just looking at text to start too, maybe, or one comment that you just clicked off of. But it looks good.
That could be awesome. Thank you. One person said that they thought that this comment box would be the opportunity for them to reply to this specific comment. So that was a little bit of concern that I had, but it could be that if they were able to scroll in this case, that they would see that wasn't, and I didn't put that functionality in because we were mostly testing the switching of the views in this case. But another person said that he felt that the breadcrumbs in this view was odd, which I thought was kind of interesting. When he navigated to the full screen view, he said, oh, it makes more sense to me here because this is where this thing lives. But because I'm viewing this in kind of a different context, it felt weird to him to have them there, which I thought was kind of an interesting observation. Everyone accurately, described what they were seeing there. A couple of folks thought that this meant to open a new issue, that it was a button and they kept trying to click it, which we've heard similar feedback before about those statuses. So that was also interesting. I had also changed the filters. This was just me experimenting to a single options menu. And I did have that clickable before I put the prototype out for testing, but didn't want to derail the conversation or the results by distracting them with that. So I hid it for now, the functionality, but it contained filters and sorting in a single options menu. And one person did address it and say, oh, I would imagine this is filters and sorting. So it could be a way that we could further reduce some of the visual noise by kind of collapsing everything under one menu.
If you came off one comment too, like it would be so cool if that was just the one comment you were seeing and everything else was collapsed or something. I don't know if that's possible. And then your like options could let you go like view all, or like, I don't know, like they could change it to show the whole scope. That's really cool.
So the next task again was for them to find 2 other ways to view this. Another interesting point was about half of the participants, when they read that, immediately closed this and started looking here. They thought maybe that kind of like you've got FLIR view options that are global settings, they kind of had an expectation that you would do like a one and done setting to view all of your issues, either in the side panel or in a modal, which I thought was interesting as well. Another person, single person, made the comment that they would expect to be able to do that in a contextual way, so that maybe in boards you would see, you could choose to see everything in a side panel, for example, but in another portion of the product, you could choose to see everything in, a modal view. The results were entirely mixed in terms of which of the screens people said they liked the most, which tells me that we're kind of on the right track by offering options. Because some people liked this simple, succinct modal view. The last person I listened to specifically said, I love this view. I like being able to see everything in one place. So that was also great. And then the first candidate, and maybe even one of the others, specifically said that they liked the full screen view. So as you can tell, I kind of put that toggle in this ellipsis menu. So you could switch back to a modal from here, or you could go to the side panel view. And then you can also, from both places, go to the full screen. And one person said, oh, I love this view. This is the view that I would spend most of my time on because I can see everything that I want. So again, some people want this sort of succinct view and others want the more detailed view. And I think it just depends on what your needs are at that time.
I like this a lot. I think too, if they click on the ID of the issue, whether in sidebar or modal, that should probably just spawn the full view too, right? I don't know if you're thinking.
I would think so. Yeah, if you're in one of those views, it should go to that detailed view. I did remove, and I did get some feedback that people didn't like the changing of the navigation, which I completely get. But I did remove switch to modal or switch to side panel view from the detail view, because you could access it from anywhere. And how would we know what to show in background or to the side? So it made sense to me to remove it from there, but it is a little jarring for the user naturally, because that there's a change there that they didn't expect. So that might be an opportunity to do a little bit more exploration there. But
as long as the back button still gets them back to previous states properly, then they could still go back to that to-do view or wherever they were coming from.
Right. And one person expressed the same thing that you had said about, I think it was Notion, being able to just do the swipe and go back previously. So I think that if we can allow that as well, then that would also be helpful.
Nice.
Yeah, so that's the research that we've done so far and what I've heard so far from the users. Good feedback, and still kind of processing some of it. So once I've got it all documented, I'll put it somewhere where everybody can see it. I'll also tag Alexis. She was out when I created this, but I'll tag her in this so she can see this research. I'd love to see what she's working on as well, just to find those opportunities for overlap. So I hope that she can attend today and I can see that, because I know she showed a little bit of it this morning, but that was the first I'd seen of it. And she's been, so I know she's probably just getting to it.
Yeah, she's been out this past week as well. But I know she did do some on the issue, but she also did a lot of diving around hierarchies and parenting. So initially, so we'll have to see how we should divvy that up between the two of you as well.
Yeah, I'll go through the two issues and put some thoughts in there and tag her in it to get her feedback. I met yesterday, so normally on Mondays, I don't know if you're invited to this or not, we have the plan issue board review conversation. You're not on that one. You should be on that one.
Is that?
And if you,
is that early in the morning?
It is actually 12 Eastern, 12:30 to 1 Eastern.
Oh yeah, because that's project management.
Okay.
I have my version of that today with product planning EMs, but I can definitely come to both if it makes sense for me to be looped in on this. I think that would probably be good.
It probably would be good just for this project, because the majority of the conversation, Gabe is out obviously, but it was just myself and Jake and Donald. The majority of the conversation was around this project. And they're, I think, still struggling a little bit to figure out where to start from an engineering standpoint, like where's the best place. And I think there could be opportunity to further scope down the UX changes that are being proposed, just to ensure that we are on the right track for providing an MVC. But what the most important piece of value that we can provide is from the start is where I'm still a little fuzzy.
Yeah. I'm still fuzzy as well. I'm
happy to make suggestions, but I think
that.
it should be a team discussion.
So I just talked to the two EMs on my side about a new scope down plan. I should have had Jake Lear on that as well, but he's not my EM, so I just wasn't thinking it through.
Sure.
I don't know if I could take you through that, or if you had a chance to look at the issue yet with the story.
I'm not
story
sure
instead of an epic.
Which one
I'll show it to you. It's new as of Friday. Gabe and I kind of signed off on it, and then before he left, and then I kind of just threw it up here.
Okay.
So the first meeting we had last week on Wednesday, there was a lot of awesome talk around what to do, but there was a lot of risk coming out of the conversation. Like if we scroll down in here, the main blocker was that Epic's migration would be blocked by projects and groups merging, and just a lot around keeping APIs up and things like that. We kind of just hit time before we even got into the front end work, or like what should be structured in that way. So after talking to Justin and all of this, like it felt way too big to me. And I had proposed this earlier, and Gabe had it as well. Gabe had also proposed scoping down a long time ago, but it got missed. So he has a comment here where he was like explaining almost exactly the iteration plan that I just came up with. So we are really on the same page.
Okay.
But what I think I'll change it to is, as long as the engineers are on board, the old way is that we migrate everything for epics within 6 months. And that was my goal. And I said I moved my features because of that. But it has a lot of timelines. We have to be precise, because on day one, our existing Epic customers are going to have this new experience. And like, is it going to work for them? Is it going to mess up their workflows? We have to have a huge like migration. We have to support old and new APIs. And so to make it less risky and a little more iterative, I'm proposing we just start at the project level and do a new issue type called story. And that will work the same way as an epic. So it's essentially, we're doing project level epics, and that will let us be more iterative. Users could try it sooner, because we could go live with it like this week if we wanted to, because no one's dependent on it. Or we could feature flag it just to us for a few months while we get the core parts in. We could run parallel paths with issues in groups, issues being supported on groups. We can just start with single level stories and then add multi-level, like call them features or something after. Whereas with current epics, we'd have to support multi-level out of the gate, which would be a lot of effort. We wouldn't have to touch APIs. We could try it sooner. So I have a lot of like pros and cons on why, or mostly pros. And so my idea was that we would start like at the smallest MVC possible, would just be a single level object above issue, has a list page, a detail page. We could talk about supporting it on boards, but that would be kind of the first level of MVC. And then the second one, we would just add a multi-level option above it and call it feature or Epic V2 project, or whatever we want to call that object. But we would start really small. Like, can we first support just a single level parent? Can issues be a child of this thing? Can the UI support it? And then the third step would be to render like both together on you could do it on the roadmaps or on boards. You could end up having stories and issues both rendering on the same views. So it could get interesting. And then like a final would be the big migration, where all of these, the old school epics in some way can migrate onto a multi-level object, whether at that point it's come together where groups and projects are merged and we're just keeping them at group and we're merging them on, or have some kind of migration plan. Then at least we'll know what we're working with, because we'll have a fully operating multi-level system happening at the project level.
What is the relationship between the epic and the story again? If
So, and
there is one?
there's nothing initially.
Okay.
Epics will live on, issues and epics will live on supporting our customers as they currently are. They can use their
Okay.
new epic boards, they can use their issue boards. We won't touch any of that. So all their current processes will work. And these are different objects, so their APIs will stand. We'll just layer on that will prove the concept of an epic, but it will be at project level and we'll get all the nesting. So in the UI, like, what does it look like to have a parent above this issue? What does it look like to be a story and looking down on this issue? And like figuring all those nuances out in the UI. And then whatever you want to do to the actual look feel of what an issue looks like, you could do right here at the story, initially on the story one, which is green field, and get it as far as possible. And then like the team could decide when they want to roll that view out onto the issue as well. If you want to do it in parallel, if you want to just, if we want to take 3 to 4 releases on stories and just nail the experience, and then they could roll it off onto issues. Just gives us a sandbox to play in where we can deliver a lot smaller chunks and get a lot more specific with the interactions versus rolling it on top of all the things. You could have a to-do from a story and it spawns the new layout, like the new modals or whatever from that one, but not from anything else.
I think that makes sense. And I like the fact that it seems like we wouldn't necessarily have to worry about retrofitting the existing issuable things into this new thing. So we could kind of build it separately and get feedback and test it and play with it without necessarily having to impact. Because that was one of the concerns that Donald and Jake had yesterday was, if we create this new thing, are we going to try to convert all of the existing issuables to this new thing? And what does that look like? So this is, I think this is interesting. And the verbiage in particular, stories and tasks also are
we could
terms
have
that were
below,
repeatedly
right?
spoken. Yep, definitely.
You could either go above it or you could take the view of going below it. We could do the exact same thing, not this, but like just have tasks and then they're the child of an issue.
Awesome.
So
I think that's great.
Yeah, initially they pushed back, but we talked through it. And by the end, they were saying it's a pretty elegant solution. That's what John and Donald were saying. So in terms of breaking it smaller. And then I think for the like UX, this could help to direct what you would be like designing for, like you were saying, instead of retrofitting, you could think, okay, well, with the story, with my new layout, it'll have a title, it will have a description, it will have comments. You could decide kind of what you want to design first. And it will need to have its children somewhere in it.
So is the story kind of our new planning object starting point then?
For now, yeah, it'll be and that's the single level version. So it's 1 level deep until we add one that does multi-level deeps of itself. Feature could go to 7, kind of like sub epics. But yeah, I think that like when you solve it for this, it will work also for multi-level. There'll be more nesting and things the higher we go up, but it should work. I mean, we want them to work across wherever, however you set up a crazy hierarchy, like they should be able to handle it. No, I always have parents and or children.
So is this going to be Alexis focusing on sort of the interactions for this? And is there anything that we want to take away from the work that I've done so far to apply to this? Or is that going to be more like later vision work?
Like I was just mentioning with like even to-dos, right? Like a story will be an issue type under the hood. So it will spawn a to-do. Your like the modals and the sidebars you were just showing can all work off this object. So that new layout, like that, I think all of that should be you figuring out how those all work together, like the geography of the issues, and whether if we lit this up on an issue board, how would that look? I think this was Gabe's thing from a long time ago, and I didn't really get it at the time, but this was a board view where a board is a board, and then you could turn on or off issue types. So in our world, it would be like, yeah, like feature, story, issue, to do, task. But yeah, that's another part of it. Like if you're on a board and you hit it, are we hitting the sidebar one? Are we hitting the modal one? There's a lot to figure out around how this new issue type will work.
For supported views there, I had created a list of all the places that you can currently pull or access issues in particular. Do we need to start thinking about, I think it also includes epics, but incidents, test cases, MRs just yet, or?
Not yet. I think we'll just go off this, and then the next step will be to move those other objects over.
Okay.
I think we'll leave all of the current navigation as much as we can. We'll leave it as is. Let me just find the planning objects thing.
By the way, they asked me to present something tomorrow, just to have a third person from Plan presenting for our UX showcase. And this is the only thing that I've really been working on. So I recognize that that could be opening a can of worms by pulling everybody in. I'm going to try to keep it clear that it's still, you know, very high level discovery, and kind of maybe touch on some of the things that we've talked about today as future planning. But just a heads up that there may be more conversations coming once it's kind of opened up to everyone.
Right. Once it goes out there.
But I think it's better that we have those conversations sooner rather than later. The later we wait, the heavier the impact it feels like of getting that feedback. So I'd rather do it as soon as possible.
Yeah, I think that's good. And so this would be these pink ones I had, which was now there's stories, but we might decide yes to title, description, attachments, linked objects, MRs. Like it might just mirror essentially what's turned on for right now for issues or epics, whichever one. I guess this would be epics. So we would mirror that down. And so you'd be building out to support, really to support any of these being turned on, but initially, like it would just be an issue with children.
Okay. Hey, Alexis.
Hey.
Oh no.
Did
you hear that, Kristen? Or
I heard a little buzz.
Okay, I did too. I had heard something similar when I was listening to the user testing audios, so I didn't know if it was my AirPods, but maybe not in this case.
I don't know. Alexis, we were talking through the proposal to move it to a story and just kind of what's involved, or trying to track this over to UX deliverables, or like what would need to be done at each phase versus the big high level redesign. But we had just kind of started on that, and just looking at the CollabJect view, this, I'm going to change the name, but like the new view that would roll out, and we could have to-dos run off of it, and the new UI and all of the things, so we could start using some of the UX that Holly's figured out around like modals versus sidebars right off the bat with the new view, with the new object. Oh, Alexis, your audio is not happening. It's just a buzz.
I was just saying, awesome. I was just asking for feedback on that. So I'll go back and watch this video.
Nice.
I don't know if you heard me, sorry.
Feedback on what?
Oh, the different like views. I'm trying to create like feedback issues around all the ideation I've done.
Okay.
So, and I want to just throw out that a lot of the work that I've done has just been exploratory stuff based on feedback that we've had and conversations we've had. But the only thing that I think that we're proposing, I'm hesitant to say proposing, but that we're kind of seriously considering initially from the work that I've done is the side panel view and the modal view, and kind of the exploration surrounding accessing an issue from somewhere in the product and not leaving your current context, and some of the potential layout tweaks But we've had some good feedback, so I'll tag you in those conversations, Alexis. I know you've been out, so I want to just tag you in all the things that I've been working on, so you can kind of see what's going on there. And I'd love to see what you're working on as well, because I think we're going to need to get together and sort through our designs, make sure we're in alignment.
Is it kind of similar to, God, my screen is like going nuts, like this thing, like the modal versus sidebar versus inline kind of thing?
I think conceptually it's similar. And one of the things I liked about what you had done here was sort of the larger, smaller, and like smallest version. And mine is similar in that it's modal versus sidebar versus full screen. So I think that conceptually it's similar, and it's just exploring ways to show the content from different layouts and in different contexts.
That makes sense. And
one thing, Alexis, that we did kind of land on, but like we do as just a requirement, like each issue needs a landing page. Like it does need to still have that, whether we call it full screen view or it's like perma ID view. Like there has to be a way to hit it where it's not on top of anything, because you just came from an email and clicked a link. So there's not really anything behind it. You're just like, now I'm on the issue. And so like the ones that spawn on top of each other, modals or sidebars, could always have a link to that sort of landed issue view. That's the old school one kind of.
So we can't have just modals or sidebars, or like we still, that makes sense, because I think in any case you would want like that full view, right? So
yeah, for writing and
like go to full view kind of thing.
Notion has that. I think Asana does too, but it kind of just like lets you just settle and just see the whole thing. But as long as you can still switch back between them or hit the back button, go back to where you were.
Yeah, that was something I was asking feedback on, like the idea of like full modals, right? Like full screen modals, where it could actually go over the navigation, everything like that, giving you more focus, room for focus. But if we have like a full page, you know, the details page, and then also the full screen modal, I wonder what that would, if that would be weird or not. But anyway.
I would like that focus mode to not see anything else. And the full width. Maybe there's 4 states, but I have that with CSS local. I just turn it on and it like transparents all the sidebars while I'm like writing.
We've had an issue from the community requesting that. It's out there somewhere. I think Gabe tagged me in it recently, so I can find it, but I think that's a great idea as well.
Yeah, it's like you have the full mode and then focus mode, you dial in on writing.
Sorry, you're just going crazy. Yeah, like playing around. Oh, these are all look really ugly, but yeah, like the idea of inline. I tried to like think of the kind of jobs to be done around all of these, and it does get a little strange. And thinking about like, do we want to be opinionated sometimes, right? Like, do we want to say at some views, like if you're in a list view, then it must be a full screen modal, or if you're within an epic, it must be inline, or, you know, do we want to like go that route? But yeah, I was thinking like something, this looks exactly like what I showed before, but yeah, really
you all are on the very similar page with that. I like the idea of having the option and being opinionated initially, but like if I want to look at all these issues and see the content at the same time, that's when I want a sidebar. If I want to focus on one at a time, then having it over the top.
And I was playing around with unpinning, like pinning it, and I don't know when you would want this, but hey, someday maybe. But yeah, I think maybe Holly, you and I can play around with this, but like what, because I was just trying to figure this out. I'm like, what are the jobs to be done when you're like creating versus, you know, viewing versus editing? Because I know we were talking about also like, is there some kind of view mode that's like not, you don't edit, you're just viewing, it's more of like a reporting mode, right? And then thinking about that across all the different like views we have, like within a single object, within a list view or roadmap, or like visualization, like what are the differences there? And yeah, I don't know, inline is interesting for like a placeholder, but it seems less useful. And then the idea of like sidebar versus full screen modal, I think it was more around like, am I refining or am I like creating documentation? Like when you're refining, you probably want that context of the other things in the list, right? Or like whatever else you were looking at, versus if you're like totally just creating something new within things like the list view or a single object, and you have all that documentation already and you know like who's going to be assigned and stuff, like that is when a full screen could be more helpful. Anyway, I'm going on and on, but I was just thinking about this like today, so I'll let y'all know if I get feedback there, but I'll also watch the video of this today.
I like that. I also wonder, from what we learned this morning with Eric, or just talking, Holly, you brought up the concept of layouts, which we haven't really gotten into. We keep determining the layouts for list view and modal view. At some point, you could give that over to the user as well. Like if they don't use health status ever, like they take it out of their layout and they put weight over in that top right corner or whatever the thing is that they care about more. I don't know if that would be tracked to the user or to the project or to like the settings for everyone or the settings for that person, because that's what they care about. But like layout, I think also is interesting.
Could that
be
like
sliced and diced different ways? Like I might have a layout for a card that's I like to show up the chain that's a lot more minimal or like something, and then I have like a detailed like label throw up on one of them because I need to actually monitor all the labels. Like there could be different fields exposed into different views as well, different layouts.
What's the difference between like a layout and a template?
So yeah, the template, I was thinking when I've been saying template, it's like story, issue, task. Oh, I see what you're saying. Template. Maybe we're saying them interchangeably to what you have here. The layout or template to me would be the fact that there's drag and drop zones, or like you were saying with Elementor, like you've got a title, you've got a bar, and it's got like 3 sections in that bar, and now I can decide what goes in each of those 3. I really like design management, so I drag it into the very top bar.
Or like, do we want, I think Holly, you mentioned this too, like, do we want a column on the right that's like just design management, and then a column on the left that's like, you know, whatever, like a task list with assignees attached to it? I don't know. But that, yeah, that's what I think layout is too. But that could be a template, right?
Yeah, you could call it whatever you want, and you could attach that template or layout to the issue type for your project, I think, to have it render that way for everyone.
And I think that this is kind of what Gabe is thinking about for extensible issues, but from what I understand, it is more of a templated situation where you're creating something that can be reused again and again, not making decisions for individual issues necessarily, but more for like a template for an issuable, or yeah, exactly, like a story type.
Like you'd lay out a story maybe slightly different than a to-do because you different things.
Right.
And if you're a parent, you could have customizable widgets on your template that are tallying things up from its children, like a roll up, like counting all the issues or counting weight, or yeah. So I said layout, but like I think we're saying the same thing with a template. Then we also have workflow templates, which is the hierarchy.
And do we want them? We don't want them. Well, do we want them customizable for first iteration? Okay.
No. Yes, let's do all.
Everything.
Let's just throw it all in. But this should be in mind. I think you should all figure out the best way to show the story or an issue or an epic, like we were saying from the beginning, what needs to be there, and then have those turned on. With the mind that there could be thinking these in the future might be drop zones for like widgets. And when you finish it, you might find some are full width, some like, what do they look at full width? Descriptions are always full width, but maybe they're not on a task. Maybe they're tiny, or I don't know.
I'm just like seeing a user like, you know, moving it around on the fly, like the description box and stuff. And I'm like, oh no. All the
In
work.
AHA, you can do that. It's pretty cool.
Someday, right, Holly? We'll get there.
Someday. I think for now, we just want to know, what the heck are we building for MVC?
Yeah, so epics, like a story essentially, support the idea of having children in an issue type. And use the new modals and whatever the geography of it needs to be to have a better experience built on Vue. I think those would be the 2 UX goals.
Yeah, cool. So going back to that, like not literally at the beginning of this meeting, but like going back to that spreadsheet, going back to our roots and thinking about, yeah, focusing on that. Yeah.
This guy. This is the new, this will be stories. So this is the shared thing that will go live and merge back onto each of these different objects after. As soon as we get it to a certain point, it works for stories, then they can roll it out on issues. Epics will be a much bigger migration later because it's a whole other object, but we've added 3 months to the timeline. If engineering agrees, we'll have 6 months to get this new stories thing off the ground. And then we'll have 3 months after that to convert epics to do a migration.
What do you mean 3 months? Sorry, what is the extra 3 months for?
So initially I had said we needed to do all of epics. The initial proposal was a full epic migration within 6 months because I bumped all of our category maturities by 6 months. But I've bumped it out another 3 months. I'm gonna do the MR after I hear from engineering, but another 3 months, which will give us 9 months total for getting epics over. So 6 months to figure out basically project level epics, and then another 3 months for the team to take what we've learned and do a migration of our existing users, which will be heavy. But we'll know more then about how they're gonna work.
How do you feel, Holly?
I feel pretty good. I admit that doesn't sound super confident, but I think anytime we go with something this big, there's always a little bit of room for discomfort and messiness and taking risks. So I'm comfortable with that discomfort, if that makes sense.
Is that around the timeline of it or the steps?
Not so much the timeline. I think the steps actually sound good as well. I think it's been more that it's just felt a little messy up until this point, but that again is common in my experience, that it's just kind of messy when you're trying to figure out exactly where to start. And I do feel like we're on the right track now in terms of defining that. So that feels good to me.
That's good. And also it's okay to counter any of these opinions too. Like if you have a better idea, please speak up. Especially around how to roll out the UX of it and like what should go first.
No, I think it's a good plan. I'm sorry, Alexis, please go ahead.
No, you. Are we kind of going based off of the epic you created, Kristen? And thank you for creating that.
Which one? There's the main one from before, and then I just added the issue that proposes the change to stories as an MVC1 instead of epics inside that epic.
I'm looking for it.
The top level epic still exists and still has our investment right here. This one?
Yeah, that's the one I was talking about.
Yeah. I'm gonna change it. I'm bouncing the new plan off everyone. I got Gabe's buy-in. I got my 2 EMs buy-in. I guess still Jake Lear I need to talk to. And we're gonna say to the whole team tomorrow on the call, it's kind of the new plan, and see how the engineers take it. But within here, this is like my proposal to take it to stories. And then there are still, in terms of design, in here, these are still all the same. These are the ones. I renamed some of these. But we can rework these to whatever your heart's content for both of you, like to whatever makes sense to support this new, like the new move towards doing stories. Probably what's in here may not. I think parenting and relating is really going to be applicable, and customizing the objects, which is the showing and hiding of certain columns, or but we don't have like timelines on these or anything, or actual deliverables tracked to them for design.
Awesome.
So feedback's like welcome on that as well. I might try to add some definition or some timelines rough around those too. I'm not sure how you all want to divide your work, divide and conquer, or keep going.
And story is the new planning object, correct? Is that correct?
It will be the single level. I'll just show you quickly from here. And this might change once engineering decides as well. So story would be project level, single level epic in this diagram. And then this shows what I called it a feature, but we could call it anything. That's where we would iterate and add a multi-level, the equivalent of having sub-epics at the project level. Feature, story, issue. Does that make sense?
So, yeah, I think so.
And we can rename these or let our customers rename them later. This is the one though that when they figure out multi-level feature, or we could call this epic at the project level, once that exists, then later we can do the migration from the normal epics to the project level ones, because groups and projects will have merged by them as well.
That's what I was going to ask. That makes sense, because what would be the difference between an epic and a feature, right?
There's nothing. So the goal is we get on this new object, epics are deprecated, issues will keep existing, but the idea of epics and epic boards we don't need anymore, because we have all of these, we basically already built epics, and these will render on boards and roadmaps and everything else by this point. So this outlier doesn't really need to exist, but our customers can keep using it for 6 months and keep using epic boards as long as it takes, so we don't interrupt them as we get this right, and prove it at a project level. Prove the UI, prove all these interactions, prove the modals, all of it on this new greenfield object.
And to your point, I think that really emphasizes why those relationships and the hierarchy is so important, because if you think about even everything being on the same board or roadmap and displaying the dependencies and all, nesting is going to get a little.
It's a lot. Yeah, I keep coming back to Gabe's. This is one of his mock-ups, but this is a board with everything on it, and the different issue types either turn on or off. So these could be like feature, story, issue, to do, and like how do you turn epic, or like how do you, when you create a board, you set its base as one more thing, that this board is just epics, or is it just issues, or is it multiples? There's a lot of fun things to figure out, but that I put that as a second, or MVC 3 was like, and these can break into smaller chunks, but rendering both on one view is something we haven't done yet. So once we have the single level story, we could then render issues and stories on a roadmap or on a board or wherever else, and figure that out.
But we do now, we still want to be opinionated about like what that single object, like story view looks like.
Yes, this
like
one.
The issue view or the, yeah, okay.
The new object. And because it's a parent, it would probably like mirror epics, but we could decide that we would get some of these other things for free from issues that we hadn't done yet on epics. So you might just decide that first, like we'll make sure it has at least what epics have, but oh, we get assignees for free now because we never had those before on epics, but we're going to add them over here on stories. So that should be the opinionated view. You're right, where it's just like everything we need to sort of go up with this sort of epic-like object on day one.
And that includes being able to change the current design a little bit of those things by getting them for free as well. Okay.
I think so. Especially with a new layout, like if you want the widget to look different, if you want it to be in a different spot, if you want it to be full width instead of on a sidebar, like just anything goes. We've got a brand new Vue app being built, so we could try the side-by-side comments. Like there's lots of different things that could be explored. And this greenfield object, we could feature flag to only ourselves. I think I mentioned that before, but like we could make it so we truly have a sandbox for a little while to see if these things actually work once we start trying them.
I like that idea.
Any other questions? Are we over time? Little. It's okay though. On my side, it's okay.
Through the MVCs and just kind of like read thoughts if I have them. But that's awesome. Thank you for you know, breaking that apart and scoping it, Kristen.
Yeah, I'm glad everyone kind of got on board with it. I was worried Gabe wouldn't, but he had already, like he had the same idea, so it worked out pretty well. So hopefully the engineering team will also be on board with that, and we can just get around a whole lot of those risks and blocks and API discussions right off the bat and just get into the UI and how do they connect.
Awesome.
Holly, we'll tell like John and the Jonalds and the Jeers. I don't know.
Jeers.
So please get on board. But yeah, no, that sounds good.
Everyone's on board so far. Jake Lear I haven't even spoken to though, so maybe I'll see if he's on today.
Well, fingers crossed.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you. And Alexis, I'll tag you in all the stuff that I've been doing, just so you can be involved there, and let me know if you have any questions.
Awesome. Thank you. Oh, and I'm like I said, I'm going to try to post more like ideation stuff so we can catch up like async as well.
Cool. Sounds good.
Thank you all.
Right.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.
Bye.